Good evening, and welcome to the December 17th Falmouth Conservation Commission hearing. At this point in time, I'd like just to remind people, if you have telephones and such, please silence them. During the hearing, we're going to have a presentation tonight that'll take approximately a little less than an hour in total. In that time period, we're going to restrict questions till the presentation is completed. And it's a presentation and not a notice of intent. It's informative for the board. So it's a pretty casual thing with good information being supplied. Also, during the hearing, anytime that you want to come up and have public comment, the chair will recognize, please come up to the podium, identify yourself for the record. And outside of that, we're on. First up, voting minutes for December 3rd, 2014. Has anybody read that?
Mr. Chair, I've read the minutes of December 3rd and found them acceptable.
I just have one correction. On page 4, 6 up from the bottom. I think it was, I meant lot, not wall. That's all. That's all I saw.
With that minor correction,
I will second that.
Do you have it written down there, Russell?
Yes, I do.
that would be Mike's motion. Russell's second, the correction being supplied. Is there any further discussion on the board? Seeing none, call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Next is December 10th minutes. Has anyone read them?
Mr. Chairman, I've read them and found them to be in good order.
Second.
That's Mary's motion. Mike's second. Is there any further discussion on the board? Seeing none, call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Next is, we're going on to a presentation by Mr. Nelson, and it's on the Coonamessett River Restoration Project. And again, I'll just remind people that we're going to have questions after the presentation has been completed. Good evening.
Thank you very much. Turn these lights
Yep,
on.
that's what we're going to go for right now. That's pretty good.
Good.
Yep. Thank you.
Great, thank you. My name is Nick Nelson. I work for a river restoration company called Interflume, and we've been working with the town of Falmouth on the Coonamessett River, looking at feasibility of fish paths to the Coonamessett River, and today I'm going to be speaking about the preliminary designs for...
Before, I don't mean to interrupt, but if you could take the mic and use that, that would be good.
All right, sounds
Thank you.
good. Is just standing here okay?
I believe so, yes.
Perfect.
Perfect. So I'll be talking about the lower dam and lower bog preliminary designs today. Before I get into the meat of this, I just wanted to mention that the project involves a large number of project partners, both on the local and federal and state levels. So certainly the town of Falmouth involved from the funding and technical perspective, as well as the Massachusetts Division of Ecological Restoration, the Massachusetts Environmental Trust, which are those license plates that you buy for the whale tail and trout on there. That goes into the funding pool for them. The number of volunteers from Falmouth and around Cape Cod, and then also with the support of the Massachusetts Division of Fish and Wildlife, Massachusetts Division of Marine Fisheries, and the NOAA Restoration Center. So there's a lot of folks involved with this project, a lot of people interested in this project and the restoration of the Coonamessett River. Just a brief outline, we'll go through a little bit of background on the project, and then we'll get into the designs. These are 75% complete designs. Then go through some example photos of other project sites and elsewhere on the Coonamessett River, and think about the next steps. My goal here is to present kind of big picture plans for the restoration project, show some example projects elsewhere so you have an idea of what this might look like, and then think about the schedule moving forwards. So our study area, the town of Falmouth is down in here, and we are on the Coonamessett River. Lower bog is right here, flowing downstream into Great Pond from Coonamessett Pond. I guess I got the pointer here. Coonamessett Pond up top. In 2011, we worked on a feasibility study for the lower portions of the Coonamessett River, a fish passage feasibility study. And this involved looking at 4 fish passage barriers, including Lower Dam down here, and a berm between Lower Dam and Lower Bog and Middle Bog, the culvert crossings at John Parker Road, and the dam at Pond 14. So evaluating various options for getting fish around these barriers a little bit better than they're able to get by right now. Following that study, the town proceeded to look for funding opportunities to further develop designs and beyond that, construction. And that flowed into this contract and project of developing the preliminary designs and final designs later on for the lower bog restoration and lower dam removal. So on this image over here, folks can see it, we have Coonamessett River flowing downstream here, and we've got Lower Dam, which is an earthen dam with granite blocks and some concrete right here. John Parker Road is along the side here, and this is Middle Bog up here flowing into Lower Bog. The goals of this project were to remove a fish passage barrier, improve both the aquatic habitat and the terrestrial habitat on either side of the river, and provide a project that is going to require minimal long-term maintenance. So we want this to be used by the public, maintain the recreational opportunities here, maintain the paths around the perimeter to continue that recreation, but not have to require a lot of maintenance to keep up the restoration project here. So we'll just do a quick photo tour here so that folks who aren't familiar with the river can get some familiarity with what it looks like. This is looking upstream. This is at the upstream end of the site, project site. I'll just back up here. We're going to start upstream here with the photos and work our way downstream. This is looking upstream at the middle berm and that culvert, small concrete culvert. It's a bit of a jump for fish to get up through that culvert and further upstream. And this is what the surrounding area looks like on either side. This is standing on that berm looking downstream. If you've walked around there, you know there's a little wooden bench right on the side here, and often fish congregating in the scour pool right here. As you can see, this bog has not been farmed for a number of years, so there's vegetation that is growing up naturally out there. I believe there's been some issues with invasive willow plants, so those have been cut back over time as well, and is still a management concern on the site. So there's a number of good native species out there. There's also a number of invasive plants. This is just moving downstream, typical look of the channel. There's aquatic vegetation growing through. It's a fairly shallow channel, wide and shallow, so the aquatic plants have a chance to grow up from the bottom. And there are some shrubs and saplings on the side growing in, providing some decent cover for fish habitat. This is a lateral ditch. So this was in the old cranberry bog where the water used to flow, and now it's been filled in with sphagnum moss and other plants through there, so it's hard to see some of those ditches sometimes. Close-up look at some of the sphagnum moss down here with cranberry plants growing through, and plenty of poison ivy all around, so be careful as you go out there. Again, another look just on the floodplain area. This is the bog surface away from the channel. Lots of ferns through here and other species indicative of wetland environments. But you'll also notice, I believe, there's a pine tree, a white pine tree up in here, which is more indicative of upland. There's a lot of anthropogenic sand on the surface of this bog as part of the cranberry industry. So these bog surfaces are becoming more upland than wetland over time. This is an open water section, not in the channel itself, but on the southwest corner of Lower Bog. A deep pool here that then feeds into the channel, just upstream of the dam. This is standing on the dam, looking upstream. A good meander bend here. There's some deep sections through here. But you can see in general, it's a pretty wide and shallow river with a lot of sand along the channel bed. And then downstream, looking upstream at the dam, this is Lower Dam, and there's a deep scour hole here, and again, some jumps for the fish to get up and through there. As you can see, we've got concrete on either side of the dam here, granite blocks around it, and granite blocks extend on the earthen berm throughout. So now with that, we'll move into what our designs are. We'll go through a couple of design plan sheets, and I'll try to explain those in some detail. Just first off, to orient, you'll notice we've flipped the orientation of the river and bog to fit within what these plan sets usually look like. So north is facing to the left here, and the river is flowing from left to right. So just so we're all on the same page. We've got the Lower Dam down here again, and Middle Berm here, and the Coonamessett River flowing downstream with John Parker Road up here. This is just an image of the existing conditions that are out there to orient everybody. The paths along the outer portions of the bog, this will be the access for construction. So we have two access points off John Parker Road, right up here and down in this area. And contractors will be able to drive all around the bog here for easy access. So this is very beneficial for this project. Oftentimes access is really challenging for river type projects, so it's great to have that opportunity. We do have a few sections also for staging and stockpiling of materials. You'll notice here this is an area where sand had been carved out of the hillside for spreading on the bogs, so that will be utilized as well for staging of construction equipment and materials and stockpiling materials. The next sheet here shows the proposed conditions, and these are the proposed grading conditions, so the changes in elevation. You'll notice these solid lines here are the proposed contour lines, and the dotted gray lines are the existing contour lines. So where we have the proposed channel here, our contour lines are a little bit tighter, and you can identify the channel banks. So what we've done here is we've put in a few additional meander bends into our river and made it a little bit more sinuous and complex. We have utilized a couple of the existing meander bends right here. We've created a new meander bend here back into the existing channel, and then back into creating some new meandering channel down here. We also have removed the dam, both the granite and concrete at the existing spillway location, but also the earthen berm on either side. Removed it all the way back to the hill slope here, and back to within about 75 feet on the east side. So this portion that's remaining over here will allow for some signage, benches, maybe some picnic tables or an amphitheater. That hasn't been fleshed out yet, but and this also provides access onto a pathway that will be built across the channel here to connect the two sides of the bog. The other features here include some side channels. So there's some small side channels built in here for additional habitat. Some spring flow that we might have coming out of the hillside here will come through these small channels. Some off-channel pools here, and then another off-channel pool right over here. Again, what we're trying to do here is to provide copious amounts of habitat, both aquatic and terrestrial, for a number of different organisms. So we don't want this to look the same everywhere. We're trying to provide complexity for different species. The pool, the open channel pool or open water pool in the southwest corner will be deepened to try to prevent some of that aquatic vegetation from growing and access some of the cold water seeping in from the bottom. This next sheet is showing the treatment plan, the proposed treatment plan. So this is where we start to think about the in-channel habitat component. So all of these little sticks that you see thrown in here on the outer parts of the meander bends are pieces of wood. And these are long logs with the root wads attached. These might be 20 to 30 feet long with a 4-foot diameter root wad stuck on the end. And these are built into the outer meander bends, both to provide bank stability so that the flow velocity doesn't erode that bank too quickly right after construction, and to provide habitat. So along these outer bends, each of these outer meander bends, there'll be deeper scour holes that will be created naturally because the wood is there and creating turbidity, but also we'll build that in upon initial construction. So we've got wood along the outer bends. We also have wood at the upstream portion of where the existing channel will be cut off. And this is important so that water flow doesn't retake the existing channel over here and basically go back to what it is right now. There'll be wood placed depending on how much wood we can get, depending on funding. Wood will be placed elsewhere on the floodplains and some of these side channel areas, likely putting some wood in this pool for habitat as well. The other treatment is fabric encapsulated soil lifts, FES lifts. I have a detail in a later slide here that will explain that in more detail. But this is essentially bank stabilization technique that is an organic fabric that degrades over time and allows the vegetation to grow up and take its place to stabilize those banks. Looking at that section in a little bit more detail, just shows you the wood along the outer bends and the fabric lifts up in here. These are the details I was talking about. For the top detail, this is a typical cross-section that you might see in the bog. The dotted line up here is the existing ground surface, and you'll see the existing channel built in here and flat straight across beyond. Proposed conditions is the solid line here. You'll notice a slightly narrower and deeper channel right here. So the existing channel is about 30 plus feet wide. The proposed channel will be about 20 feet wide. And that's to consolidate the flows, make it deeper for better habitat, and try to create some of that complexity in the channel. The floodplain will be graded gently up to the bottom of the valley here. The perimeter ditches will get filled in for the most part, except where we see these groundwater seeps coming through. And where we have those, we'll leave that open and create an access point for that groundwater to get to the main channel and other habitat. The second typical detail here shows how the wood is placed on the channel banks, on the edges of the channel here. It looks like a pretty rectangular channel here. Don't worry, it's not going to look like a concrete rectangle or trapezoid there. This will be a deep scour pool by the wood here, and then this will be a shallow section on those bends. So this is just your average channel bed elevation. The wood is placed in a complex of multiple layers, so we'll have a layer at the very bottom of the bank, providing stability and strength against the channel velocity. And then a log will be stuck into the bank along with the root wad sticking out into the channel. So this is to simulate a tree that has grown up and matured on the floodplain, and for a storm or due to old age, it falls into the channel and creates some scour around that root wad and creates some habitat complexity. It also deflects the energy of the water away from the sandy banks to prevent additional erosion. This lower detail here is the fabric encapsulated soil lift. We typically describe these as soil burritos. So it's essentially a bunch of soil wrapped up in fabric, and that fabric is underneath, along the outside, and wrapped in up top as well. There's native seed that is spread within that fabric, on the inside of the fabric, and plants planted on top and throughout the fabric. So this fabric will come alive within the first growing season, and once that vegetation has a chance to stabilize and mature, this fabric will be degraded and you won't see it anymore. Lastly, here we have the planting plan. It's pretty basic here. We're going to plant the whole place. So it's not, we don't have specific areas carved out for planting and others for not planting. The entire area will be planted with trees and shrubs, native trees and shrubs. And this species list is just an example species list of some of the species we found out there already, some species that we found in downstream habitats, and other species that have worked well on other very similar types of projects in portions of southeastern Massachusetts. So there will be, the plants that will come out here will be planted in pods generally. So Atlantic white cedar will be placed in clumps. So you have a stand of Atlantic white cedar, or you have a section of red maple, and that's how these species generally like to evolve. Going to show a few pictures of an example restoration project in Plymouth that we've used a lot of the same techniques for the Coonamessett project. And this is what some of those large wood pieces look like once they're built into the channel. This is a narrower river up there, a smaller channel. But you get the same idea with the different layers of logs that are involved there. And then the Atlantic white cedars that are grown out here. So these started out as 3-foot saplings, 3-foot trees, and now about 4 years later, these are 8-10 feet tall or so, and growing a couple of feet a year. That's again a look at the Atlantic white cedar trees out there and the native vegetation that has grown up. So this was all cranberry bog prior to restoration. No native seed was placed out here. No native seed was spread out here. All of this just came up naturally. So the only things you see here that were planted were the Atlantic white cedar trees. Everything else just came up by seed, and that's what we anticipate will happen at Coonamessett as well. Downstream of Lower Dam is a section of the river that I believe was a cranberry bog in the early 1900s, but was short-lived. And so it's had about 100 years to recuperate, and it's turned into a red maple swamp. And so we can get some idea of some conditions down there that are more in line with what we're looking for. The channel is a bit narrower than our channel in our study area right now. You can see lots of vegetation all around, some complexity of coarse grain material down here, and a little bit of faster water. You can see some undercut banks here with the roots stabilizing the banks. This is very important for fish habitat and aquatic habitat. Again, trees growing along the edge, a narrow channel, some complexity with deep water, shallower waters. Deep scour hole down here where the river narrows and creates some scour. And then some off-channel water in the floodplain area where you have some trees growing, some springs coming up. And again, more complexity. So just briefly, the last couple of slides here, thinking about the next steps. We've completed these preliminary designs. The next step is to move into the permitting phase. As you know, there are a number of permits required for projects in Massachusetts, starting with the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act, the MEPA permit, as well as the Mass Historic Commission, and beginning that project notification form. So those are the two that we typically start with, and then we move into the Wetlands Protection Act with the Notice of Intent, the 401 Water Quality Certification, Chapter 91 dredge fill license, and an Army Corps 404 permit. So there are a number of permits that go into this. This time frame to get through all of this can be anywhere from a few months to 6 months or a year or more. So we hope to get through this quickly, but it's a process that takes some time. Once we get through the permits, then we will finalize the design plans, incorporating any comments and feedback received from the regulatory agencies. Develop a project manual for the contractors. This is essentially their contract to go out and build the project, all the technical specifications, the forms to sign, all of that. Then we go through a bid process where we get contractors to bid on the project, have site visits, and select our contractor, and then move into construction. So it's getting to this stage at the preliminary design level is exciting, but there's still a little ways to go to get to the end here. And I'll take questions.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Does anybody have trouble with the lighting, so that if we need to reference any of the slides, we can go back without turning lights on and off? Is this okay with everybody? All right, I'd like to poll the board first, and then open up the public comment. All right. Starting with you, Mario.
I know we all have a lot of questions, and I'm going to confine myself to two. When I've been working out there in the past, I've met with a few local residents, and one fellow who introduced himself as an assistant herring warden for the town. They expressed some concern about hydrologic changes resulting from this project in the middle bog, which I understand is still agriculturally used for cranberries. Do they have any reason to be concerned about hydrologic changes in the middle bog that might affect cranberry agriculture?
That's a great question, and I believe conditions have changed in that middle bog in recent years. And I don't know, Betsy, if you want to speak to that now or another time, but that middle bog currently is not being farmed. Is that correct understanding?
It's not an agricultural use now? I got the impression it was, so I'm a little confused about that.
Well, it had been in recent years. The person who was farming those bogs stopped collecting the berries. So it's an evolving process up there, and so I'm not sure if that process is completed. But the end result is we're not changing that culvert right now, and that culvert between middle and lower bog has a set elevation at the bottom. We are not modifying that with this project right now. Our goal is to help the fish get up into that culvert and into middle bog. So we'll be structuring the channel downstream to provide a bit more backwater just downstream of that culvert to raise that water a little bit so the fish don't have to jump quite as high to get in there.
That's a substantial culvert, too.
Well, it's narrow, and the water really flows through there pretty quickly, so
Does, yeah.
they have a tough time getting through there.
Just one other question. The open water pool to the southwest of the main dam, you said you were going to be dredging it, in effect. Now, I've personally noted a population of muskrat that live there. Is this going to have any effect on them?
Certainly short-term effect. So typically for these projects, if there are known species in the area, known wildlife that we know live there, fish species, muskrat, endangered turtles, that sort of thing, we'll go through and make sure they're out of the work area. For that particular spot, I would imagine they will move out very quickly once these big machines are starting to move around the site. Once they move out, once the project is completed, they'll move right back in.
So no plans to trap them out? They'll just move off on their own?
Typically they do, yep. The turtles move out, most of the animals move out. It's not to say that there won't be some mortality in some species, in some individuals in the process, but for the most part, animals will move out of the way and move right back in.
Thank you.
Harry.
I'm curious as to whether or to what extent you're restoring conditions to some, historical condition, or whether this is really pretty much strictly engineered to achieve the objectives.
Sure. A great question, and I think it's really hard to know what was historic anywhere in New England. I don't think we have an unimpacted river system. So to understand what was here originally is very difficult. And we also have a new hydrologic regime now with higher rains, higher flows out there. So what we did for this was to look at the Mashpee River, which has generally been unfarmed and undammed. We looked at the lower sections of the Coonamessett, which has had 100 years to recover from farming and damming. And we've looked at maps and hand-drawn maps from the 1700s and 1700s of similar types of rivers throughout southeastern Massachusetts to try to get a template of what these streams look like. And so with those, that's how we developed the plan form and the bendiness of the river, and how we thought about the bank heights and channel widths.
Yeah, I was thinking, among other things, but specifically about the channel path, the bends, and so are you kind of interpreting past history, or do you have maps showing it pretty much the way you've designed it? I'm just,
Right.
kind of curious.
Yep, no, that's interpretation. There is no map that shows the original location of that channel. So it's interpretation based on what we have there, working with the existing meander bends, and then thinking about the plan form that we're seeing in other similar types of rivers that have had less impact, and trying to simulate something like that.
Thank you.
Russ?
No question.
Mike?
River dynamics, we touched on the hydraulics. I assume conditions after look like conditions before, hydraulics.
Yes, the water that's coming in and going out will be the same before and after.
Before and after, so if there is a flood event, we haven't done, hydraulically, we haven't done anything to people upstream
Correct,
or downstream.
correct. The 100-year flood will not change upstream or downstream of the projects.
You burned out my knowledge of changing streams.
Great.
John?
I guess looking at this project, you're establishing a new channel that has a lot more flow to it. Are you anticipating that, how long does that generally last after you've established this channel? Because rivers tend to move over time. I'm just wondering, kind of in terms of the project, how that fits in, kind of the future aspect of the river.
Sure. Great question. We, for these types of projects and for most of our restoration projects, we anticipate that the channel will move over time, and we hope that the channel will move over time. That's part of the natural process of rivers. So the way it's been designed and built here is to have those logs and root wads stabilize the outer meander bends in the near term, and then as the trees that we've planted out there grow up over the next 100 years, they'll fall in and take the place of those that are there. So over time, we expect those trees to fall in and potentially block up the river, which will force it to go somewhere else and create a new channel. What's different about this river from other steeper rivers is that this is a very low gradient system. So it does not have, it's not like a steep, rocky mountain stream that has a lot of energy to change course over time. We have lots of wetlands upstream. When we have heavy rains, those wetlands soak up the water and gradually send it downstream, so it's not a flashy system. So I don't anticipate this channel to change as dramatically as we might anticipate other rivers around the state or around the country. But certainly over the next 100, 500,000 years, this river is going to be in a different spot.
And so in terms of the plantings that are going to happen there, you have kind of this idea, you have, the plants that you're going to plant, and you're going to plant over the entire area. Are you looking at having predominantly trees coming up in that area? Is it going to be relatively uniform, or are there going to be areas where you're going to have more trees and, do
Sure.
you understand what I'm
Yep.
saying? Is it, okay.
Absolutely. So there'll be a mix, and a mix of species. So we'll have willow trees out there, we'll have alders out there that are fast-growing species, and we'll probably plant those close to the stream edge to provide some shade relatively quickly. And then some of the other species that come in will come in a little bit slower. But the end result will be a forested wetland out there in 20, 50 plus years. Getting up to that point, there'll be variations in plant height. The trees that you see out there now, I think that bog has been abandoned for maybe 10 years or so. Is that about right? So, somewhere around there. So you've got trees out there that are 15 plus feet tall that have grown from nothing in 10 years. So that gives you a gauge of what that'll look like. So there'll be some areas that will be low shrubs. We're going to be planting lots of shrubs also. There's some open water areas that certainly won't have trees growing in them. There'll be lower vegetation along the edges, and then the other trees throughout.
Thank you.
All right. At this point in time, I'm going to open it up to the audience. I'd like you to make your comments or questions brief. If you have a follow-up, you can stay at the podium, but realize that there may be more than just yourselves that has a question. Please go up to the podium, and who wants to be first? Are there any questions in the audience?
Hi, Nick. Charles Cooper. I'm one of the board members of the Coonamessett River Trust. I was here to speak with you and Lou maybe a month ago.
Yes.
Mainly about the river herring program. I have two questions. One concerns the river herring, and although we did have a chance to meet with Nick a little while back and talk about some things, this didn't come up and hadn't occurred to me until I saw the presentation. Essentially what you're doing is speeding up the river in that last stretch between Middle Dam and Lower Dam. One of the things we think we've seen happening is that the blueback herring, not the alewives, but the blueback herring may be spawning in the river itself. Now, have you considered whether or not by speeding up a stretch of the river, you're exporting eggs and early stage larvae that would otherwise be able to stay in long enough to survive better? And I mean, sort of a two-part question. If you haven't, could you do a little bit of sampling just to see what the densities may be? Wouldn't be too hard, I think, in early May, for example, to do some plankton sampling and see what you may have that is staying in there now at lower velocity, and whether or not you might have to, I don't know, for argument's sake, add some submerged aquatic vegetation to help trap some more of those planktonic stages before they get exported in the faster velocity.
Great question.
You're going to have to surrender the podium so he can use the mic.
Surrender.
That's okay.
Great question. I think in general, the velocities will not be changing a tremendous amount. So while we're narrowing the channel, we're also increasing the channel length by putting those meander bends in there. So you're kind of offsetting that a little bit. Where we will see higher velocities are in those outer bends where it cuts around there in those root wads and logs. So the overall water velocity won't be changing substantially, and there'll be a variety of velocities out there. So there'll be the higher velocity areas on those outer bends, but those are deep pools, so there'll also be some lower velocity areas in those pools, and just downstream where you have some eddying going on. In the straightaways, you'll have variability between faster water in the main center of the channel and quieter water on the edges. So I don't anticipate there being much of a change in terms of the ability for blueback to spawn.
The second question is more of a kind of a heads up for the commission, because things have changed a lot in the last month on the state regulatory front that may be specifically applicable to this river. The Sustainable Water Management Initiative has been finalized in November. I think Ray Jack was involved in some of the meetings along with me and a whole cast of thousands. So you can get some more information on it from him. But one of the regs that was implemented would suggest that if there is to be retained any water withdrawal wells, and there is at least one in the drainage, that if the stream is classified as a cold water fishery, a lot of what's planned here is to enhance its ability to be a trout stream, cold water fishery, then there are going to be new constraints on withdrawals that are associated with these regs. So what I'm suggesting is that as we go forward with this, there are probably going to have to be some different dimensions of thought about how the trade-offs occur between maintaining withdrawals and having a classified cold water fishery.
Is that your question or your statement?
That is my statement. My question you can't answer, which is how's it all going to work out?
Well, if it's all right, I'd like to have Betsy come up. She might be able to give you a little insight.
Hi, Betsy Gladfelder. I work with the Conservation Commission and Nick on this project. A couple of points I want to make. First of all, Nick, it wouldn't be Nick's responsibility to do any sampling. Nick is contracted with the town for specific jobs, and one of the roles that Coonamessett River Trust has played is answering some specific questions that we have. So if there are questions that you think about, you and other people in the trust, what I suggest is you talk to Jen, since these are conservation lands, and go over what kinds of information we might need. So, that it's a good idea to find out where the blue-black herring are nesting and sort of what the productivity might currently be. That's information that would be nice to have, but it's not information that Nick's going to present. The second thing I want to point out is Nick talked about the next step, which is applying for permits. And one of our partners is the Division of Ecological Restoration. And Beth Lambert couldn't be here today, but Nick and she and I met, and she will be doing all the permitting, and she does permitting. Division of Ecological Restoration does permitting for river restoration projects all around the state. And so I'm sure she's very familiar with any changes and will help us do it. And in fact, Division of Ecological Restoration, for those of you, for the engineers who are here, you know that the permitting process can take a long time and can be, at least bear some cost to the applicant. And we are very fortunate that Division of Ecological Restoration is covering all those costs.
Do we know who the current users of the water are?
I know some current users who have permits, but I don't. Nick met with a lot of people who lived all along the river, and our understanding is that they're not currently using it. They're not currently drawing from those permits.
Is the town?
I don't believe the town takes any water from. The town takes water from, has a well by Coonamessett Pond, but, well, but then it's the town, the town is the one for drinking water that has to worry about that.
And.
But that's not, we're not involved in those permits.
And if I may, on the first slide, we acknowledge all the people that are contributing to this, and a couple slides later, the permitting process. At the beginning, I would like to see you just submit something in writing so that we can keep it in the record, so that would be recognized, and that is a little flag, because I'm sure that would be a topic of discussion, not just in the future, once, but more than once. It's something that would, there's plenty of people that recognize that, particularly with the new regulations and all the activities and all the focus on this restoration. So it's not going to be just going away, it's going to have to be addressed.
Can I just make one more comment?
Please.
And the other comment is, this is part of looking at the overall Coonamessett River system, and that's a good point to put in. So I would echo what Tom said, add it so we have it into the record, or something written. Thanks.
Thank you, Betsy. Please, and this is, before you do anything after this one, I want to see if anyone else wants to speak. All right? One moment. After he says this, I'm more than happy to get to you.
Yeah, I just want to make it really clear what I was trying to communicate, which was not that it wouldn't be part of the permitting process. It was that this is one of those, what do we want questions. In other words, if the regulations do apply to withdrawals from anywhere in the drainage.
Yes.
So I think what I'm urging the town to do is to begin thinking about how do we want this to balance out. If we're going to say, okay, we're going to stop withdrawing from that well, okay, that's a balance on one end of the spectrum. Another end of the spectrum would be, all right, we're going to try to work out a way to continue a withdrawal, even if it's classified as a cold water fishery. So it's not whether it's covered, it's what do we want?
And that is a very good place to begin. Thank you.
Deborah Siegel from the Coonamessett River Trust. I'm a member of the trust, not on the board, but I've been involved in helping us get to this point for more years than I want to count. And I just wanted to tell you that we're very excited about this, and Lou Turner may be getting ready to say something like that. And we just are very happy to get to this point and are delighted that the Conservation Commission has helped to get to this point, and this is a very exciting plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm Lou Turner, and I am the newly elected president of the Coonamessett River Trust. My question is, right now, the migration is such that when the fish come up over the dam, there's a holding pool, staging pool for them, and they stay there because they're safe from predation. And I've seen them, the lead fish, start to go upstream, and as soon as they encounter shallow water, no cover, they just drift right back. And they'll be in that pool all day. And they'll start going up late afternoon, early evening. From what Nick is saying, my guess is, and I'd like to have you confirm this, that the new river will provide adequate cover for them to not necessarily stay at the bottom all day. And I think it being narrower and the logs that are in the river are going to provide cover for them. My question is, when they get up to the top of the lower bog, is there going to be, well, I hope we don't have 500 or 1,000 of them right there at the top, waiting. Instead of waiting down at the bottom, they're going to be waiting up at the top to go through the culvert there. Once they're through the culvert, there's no protection for them. So I hope we're not creating a situation where the predation might happen once they get into middle bog. Is my questions, comments to the point?
So, great questions about the fish pooling up in some of the deeper pools below the dam, and also in the deeper pool just upstream of the dam there. As you say, the hope here is, and the plan here and the designs, is to have those holding pools throughout the river length in Lower Bog. So they'll have habitat, holding pool, and cover here, and here, and here, and here, and all up and down here. And over time, as the vegetation grows up, they'll have cover on both sides of the river as well, even between those deeper pools. So certainly there'll be plenty of cover throughout the restored section here. Our hope is that, and plan for the designs, is that we've built a riffle in place just downstream of the culvert up here that will raise the water surface just a little bit at that culvert, so that they're not trapped there quite as much, that they can get through that culvert faster. It's a good point, though, in terms of, we'll certainly see fish hanging out at that pool, and we might consider getting a couple of logs in there to provide some cover even while they are hanging out there. For this project, we can't do anything about the system upstream yet, but that's kind of the possibility for the next phase, looking beyond this lower bog. Let's see how this looks, see how this does, and then think about modifying the culvert to allow for easier passage, and depending on how things develop in the middle bog, going from there. But right now, we're focusing on this lower bog area.
Thank you. And I would just like to remind you, I'm going to call this by 8 o'clock. So if we can be brief. We got another 7 minutes.
Okay. My name is Paul Lolito. Hopefully this is moot, but in the early 80s, this is the very terminus or the beginning of the stream, the origin of the stream at the Coonamessett Pond would dry up, and there would be, from my own personal observation, the stream bed was littered with fingerling fish. And you did mention a new hydraulic regime. I've been out of touch for quite a while. Hopefully everything I'm saying is moot, but hopefully that will be taken into consideration so you won't run into that problem where in that critical time in the spring that it would dry up. And I personally observed just the stream bed littered with fish, and it was an awful sight. So I see no mention of the origin here, so I don't know if that's been taken into consideration or not. Thank you. And it's a great project, great presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great point. Down in this lower section, we don't have an issue of the river totally drying up. There are portions at times of the year during some of the cranberry operations where they need to pool up the water in certain bogs, and that will limit the water flow. But the designs here incorporate a low flow channel in the design channel, so that whatever water is in the channel will congregate into a low flow portion rather than getting spread out over a wide
at the origin of the stream. It's basically a dredged ditch, very narrow, and you can see the spoils right on the side. And it's totally north of all of this activity. This is fantastic. But I think the fish would come and they get to that point, and I don't know if you've taken that into consideration. I just want to call that to your attention, that's all.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. There are lots of issues in the watershed, and we're trying to alleviate the fish passage concerns at the downstream end, and we can't work on everything all at once. So I don't know the existing conditions up there.
Did you want to make comment to that, Betsy?
Just that,
Okay.
no,
Please.
I don't.
Okay.
but- Yeah, this is just to answer your question. Well, not to answer your question, but this is an early phase of working on restoring fish
Excuse me, Betsy,
habitat on
could
the
you
whole
talk
river.
into the microphone, please?
Okay. This is an early stage in restoring fish habitat and actually restoring a riverine habitat in the whole system. You're absolutely right. There are some, past the 4 areas that Nick did a conceptual study on, there are some other issues that we're aware of.
Okay, that's all
No, we're definitely aware of them.
Good.
But I can't tell you what the solution's going to be. There will be a solution at some point.
Is there anyone that would like to have something brief? If not, I'm going to put, when Russ turns on the lights, I'm going to put 2 cents in on this. This presentation, one of the things that, Nick, if you would get in the field of vision here, my comment to you, great command to the project, can respond without pause. Anytime a presentation has been made in this board and someone can respond to an unrehearsed deluge of questions and be able to respond in kind is impressive. I know that there's a lot of work that goes in this. There's a lot of work by all the people that are involved in this. I would like to recognize Betsy for her special participation for quite some time and being helpful to myself and others, having a greater appreciation of it. All the comments that were made tonight, I would strongly encourage you to write them down and submit them for the file. This is a presentation of a 75% thought-through project, of a portion of a bigger picture. All this is much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We have more business to be done. If there's any discussions further on things, I would ask you to go down the hallway out of earshot. Next, we have request for continuance under a determination of applicability. That's 8 Brockton Street.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting a continuance until January 14th.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any, that was Mary's motion, Russ's second. Is there any further discussion on the board? Is there any discussion in the audience on that project?
Nice job.
Seeing none, a call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Now we go on to requests for determination of applicability. First is 12, actually this, before I even say it, the request for determination of applicability is a mouthful, but what it is the lesser of the 2 permits we're hearing tonight. What you want to hear is a negative determination. That means that the project, thank you, Nick. What you want is a negative determination on the project. That means it goes forward as presented to the staff. First is 12 Bayview Ave, East Falmouth, Mass, for permission to install underground conduit and 3-foot trench for future electric service, remove and replace 1 tree, pump, fill, and abandon the existing cesspool, and upgrade with new Title V sewage disposal system.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the staff has reviewed the project. We are recommending a -2 under the state and the bylaw with the resource area boundaries not confirmed.
So moved.
Well, that would be Mary's motion and Mike's second.
There you go.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to discuss this project? Is there any discussion on the board?
I just have one question.
Please.
Under your note, the not shown on plan, what does that mean exactly? Freshwater wetland was not shown on the plan, but will be for any future project.
I'll have to double check that with Mark. Let's see what we got on here. Salt marsh. Buffer, there's probably a small freshwater fringe attached to the salt marsh.
Okay, gotcha. Great, thank you.
All right. Any
That's
further?
why we're not confirming the resource area boundaries.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Next has been continued to January 14th, and we move on to 194 Sea Pit Road, Wacoit, Mass. For permission to replace the entire dock decking and to add center stringers.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we're recommending a -2 under the state and the bylaw with the resource area boundaries not confirmed.
So moved.
Once again, that would be Mary's motion. Mike's second.
We'll get it together, Mary, don't worry.
Absolutely.
Problem is, we've got it together.
Is there any discussion on the board about this project? Is there anyone in the audience who has any comments or questions? Seeing none, I call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Now we move on to continued request for determination of applicability. Once again, the negative determination is what you'd like to hear. First is 10 Chappaquoit Road, West Falmouth, Mass. For permission to pump, fill, and abandon existing cesspools and install a new Title V sewage disposal system.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we are recommending a -2 under the state and the bylaw with the resource area boundaries not confirmed. And
So-
we've asked the owner to install a single rail fence along the wetland boundary because there's mowing. So they have to cease mowing and install like a little single rail fence.
Has that,
That has been communicated to the applicant's representative.
thank you.
So moved.
Second.
So that's Russell's motion, Mary's second. Is there any further discussion on the board? Is there any discussion in the audience?
Ron Harrington, prepared to answer any questions.
Okay. I don't think we have any. I think we'll be good.
Well ahead right now.
Yep. Thank you. Did you get his name, Mary?
Susan.
Susan. Jeez. That's mine. Okay, so you, that wasn't, did you get it? Okay. All right. If there's no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Next is 402 Wild Harbor Road, North Falmouth, for permission to rebuild an existing 4.5-foot by 13.5-foot shed and expand to 6.5 by 13.5.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, -2 under the state and the bylaw with the resource area boundaries not confirmed.
I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Okay, that's a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mario's second. Russell's motion, Mario's second. Any further discussion on the board? Yes.
We're the shed's increasing in area by 50 feet, something like that? I think I'm perfectly happy with it.
Yeah, just give me 1 second, Mike. John, you want to? Hand that. Oops, sorry. It's all in like lawn area down there.
That's all the same.
Yeah.
All right, fine, that's good.
Any further discussion? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on this project? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Next is request for a hearing under a notice of intent. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are simultaneously held under the authorities of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision of the commission is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. First on the evening is 26 Conduit Road, North Falmouth, Mass. For permission to renovate the existing house, which includes elevating the structure to current flood zone requirements, footprint modifications, restoration plantings, and the associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping. Good evening, Tim. Thank you. There's an easel for me to read. Okay. Thank you.
Good evening. For the record, Tim Santos from Holmes & McGrath representing the applicant. Property is located at 26 Conduit Road. The resource area is on or within 100 feet of the property. Land subject to coastal storm flowage and a coastal dune. The property is currently developed with an existing single-family home, decks, and a driveway. The property has recently been purchased, and the new owners would like to renovate the home. In doing so, we need to raise it by about 3.5 feet in order to meet the new flood zone standards. So we're proposing to raise the house, R-A-I-S-E, renovate it. We're going to make some modifications exterior as far as an AC platform. We're going to relocate the existing shower out back, as well as reconstruct the deck to the west side of the house with some storage below. We're also proposing a first floor cantilever deck. There's actually a reduction of about 27 square feet of development when everything's said and done. We are proposing a silt fence to go approximately 15 feet around the house to allow the contractor access around it. Any disturbed area, if you've been to the site, any area that's disturbed, which is basically everything around the house because it's a dune, will be regraded with sand and planted with beach grass. If you've been to the site, there's an area just right off of the property that was not cut by the present owner. We're not quite sure how it was cut, but the applicant's willing to restore that area with beach grass or woody species. I did speak with Jen earlier this evening, and we did discuss that as well. All roof runoff goes to dry wells currently right now. They'll continue to go to dry wells. And there's an existing Title V septic system on the property that's in good condition for the transfer of the property, and it will remain. If the board has any questions, I'd be more than happy to address them.
Thank you. Jen?
No, Tim and I discussed my concerns this afternoon, and so you'll see a special condition in there for, Mark's favorite plant, bayberry.
Okay. John?
No questions.
Mike?
Propane tank.
I do not believe there's gas in front of the property. We have discussed that with the owner, contractor, architect. If there is gas, they probably would wind up tying into it, but at this time, we're going to leave the propane area as an option if there's no gas.
Something to tie it down during that.
We'll speak with the
Then I
contractor
don't want to talk about
that.
The thing is bobbing around in somebody's yard.
It'll be taken care of.
Okay. That's it.
Okay. Russ?
No questions.
You're replacing, it says existing deck to be removed and replaced with new decks. Is that one above the other?
Yeah, it's one above the other, correct.
And for the storage area under the cantilever deck, are you planning to install any kind of screening around it?
Well, the storage isn't under the cantilever deck,
Oh.
it's under the
Okay.
two-story deck.
All right, and so are
So
you...
there would be some screening so that, you wouldn't see what was under there. and nothing would be stolen. So yes, there would be screening.
And how many bedrooms? I know there's,
It's an existing three-bedroom home, and it will remain three bedrooms.
that's all for me, thank you.
Mario?
As I read this, the limit of work and the extent of coastal dune are one and the same?
Pretty much everything outside of the driveway in the house is a coastal dune. So,
Do we have a square footage on what kind of disturbance we're talking about in the dunes itself? It just says all disturbed areas within the limit of work.
yeah, I can, hold on, let me look at the notice. 1,800 square feet. 1,800 square feet.
Do we need a planting plan at all, or are we just going to leave it at 1,800 square feet of beach grass?
It's not all gonna be beach grass, Mario, because there's an area in front that I want planted with woody vegetation. If you'd like a planting plan, I'm sure the applicant can provide one to you. Would you like one?
1,800 square feet is a fairly substantial amount of disturbance.
Well, I mean, the woody species is up along the road, as we discussed. What's around the house is basically, 3 to 5 columns of beach grass, 12 inches on center. I believe that's what it says.
Right.
I'm not quite sure how I'm gonna put that on a planting plan. But I'm sure I could meet with staff to satisfy anyone's concerns.
How do you feel about that, Jen?
That's fine. I mean, we can condition that, and I'll meet with Tim to get that. I mean, you don't have to have a continuance over.
Yeah, I'm just,
Yeah.
No,
not that I don't enjoy coming here.
No, I think that'd be a great way
Yes,
to
we
incorporate
know how
that,
much you
so
love
that
coming here,
we
Tim.
don't have to.
We
And
enjoy
plus,
seeing
we'd
it.
have a hands-on with it.
Defer to staff on that.
Okay,
Yeah,
outstanding.
we'll be fine. So that'll be a condition.
We all good, Mario? Okay. Can you throw a dry well detail?
Yes, we can.
That'd be awesome.
You guys always forget that when he asks every week.
If it was proposed, I would have it on there, but they exist, so,
They're not gonna be, when you're going around that, you're not gonna be digging that up? No?
no.
Okay.
There's no plans for it.
All right, if it's an
If
existing,
they're damaged, they'll definitely be repaired.
that would
so.
be the caveat on that. Again, rolling that in, that'd be awesome. Do we have enough information?
I think we do. I make a motion to close the hearing, take it inside.
Second.
So that'd be Mike's motion, Russell's second. And at this point, is there anyone in the audience who would like to comment on this project? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Yep, Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. We'll see you on the 7th.
Next is 213 Sea Pit Road, Wacoit, Mass. For permission to install a generator, rinse station, set of deck chairs, BBQ pad, native tree and shrub mitigation, restoration plantings, create a vista corridor and the associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping.
Oh, yeah, I know about this one.
Good evening.
Evening, Tom.
Thank you.
Two neighbors, only a 50% return.
Thank you for the record. My name is Tom Bunker with BSS Design, and we, in conjunction with Blue Flax Design, prepared these plans. Amy Wolfson is here from Blue Flax Design to do part of the presentation. The property is at the very south end of the Sea Pit Peninsula. As you see, it's bordered on the west side by Childs River, and there's a Sea Pit River is to the east of it, even though it doesn't quite border it. See, the property line cuts down, it's a north-south property line. Right through here is actually a lot of that, all that land over there is the butter's property. Surrounded by salt marsh, and there's a BBW fringe uphill from the salt marsh, and the both water bodies coming in there in zone AE elevation 13. And so when you have a flood zone and on some elevated land, you invariably have some coastal bank, which I've drawn on there. And pretty much when you get up toward the house, the land is pretty much at a steeper than 10% slope. I didn't draw it on the filed plan, but I can show you there. I did mention that there's some steeper parts down at the bottom, and it's sort of flatter in the middle, and then it just steepens right around the house. I've drawn on here somewhat, actually, of some of these areas, particularly this lawn area just downhill from where they want the steps, is flatter than 10%. And a lot of the Charles River area, there's a steeper bank down near the water, and then it's very flat, or at least flatter than 10%. And then it picks up a little bit, again, right along the house. So we call this like a secondary coastal bank through here. This site has a house which was built in 2006 under a notice of intent house and a septic system and the driveway. Those utilities, was a fairly tight limit of work surrounding that house when it was put in. And there's also a pier which was also built under a separate notice of intent, also in 2006. Some of the area off to the side, you have this green area here that I mentioned with lawn, is a remnant from, this all was one larger parcel of land which goes with the house that's up the side there, and that lawn is part of their lawn, which the lot line crosses it. And there's also an area underneath the trees as you go down that has a mix of sort of a native grass. Amy can explain more what that grass is. Something crinkly, was it? I can't remember there. Good mix of native plants, actually good, huckleberry and things underneath the tree canopy. But there were a few areas that were perhaps mowed by a previous owner. And those areas, some of those areas are shown in the darker green, which will be planted. Amy can explain about the vegetation management, that is removing invasive plants and planting everything that's proposed to be planted as a native plant. Before Amy gets into that, though, we'll talk about some of the things I want to do around the house. The first one, as in the notice, is installing a natural gas generator, coal-house generators up in this area next to the driveway. It's in an area that's a landscaped area. It's in the zone B, greater than, it's quite a ways from the top of the coastal bank. Up there, that covers 28 square feet in the B zone. And down in this area, right here, you walk down this side, there's a stone wall, down some steps. And what they wanted to do is put in some steps from here up to the deck. And also in this corner, a little rinse station right there. That's in an area where it is presently, there's just mulch. And, that having those steps there can reduce some of the traffic, which would now go around the base of the deck. Allow people to go, rinse the salt off or whatever, and then just go directly up onto the deck rather than around it. The rinse station will have the slatted wood floor built over drainage stone underneath it, and it will be a drain inlet there that will tie into the dry well. Water will go into the dry well, and the well that's right there has had some problems with it, and it will pull out the sand, clean out the pipes, and make sure that the dry well is working properly and connected with the downspout in that location. Slight regrading, if you've been by there, it's not the best grading to walk around the corner of that. So it's just a little bit of fill placed there, probably too little to fill. I couldn't even show a contour there. It's just such a small amount of fill, just to level the walking path around this area, which is in mulch, just uphill from that lawn area. And it will remain basically a mulch path, no impervious surfaces put in there. The rinse station is about 24 square feet, and the steps 21 square feet. Both these are in the A zone to the coastal bank. I mean, basically almost on the coastal bank, right there, just about. Around the corner from that, on the other side of the deck, Mr. Keck wants to do his barbecuing not on the deck up above, but he wants a small bluestone dry lay area right there next to the steps down from the deck. That also that's right at the top of a coastal bank, but within 10 feet of the deck, in an area that's mostly there's I think one shrub there, but generally it's in the mulched area. That is about 28 square feet in the A zone of the salt marsh and the coastal bank and the B zone of Childs River. There is a kayak, small boat rack down by the beginning of the pier, which was built without permission. There's no roof, no floor to it. The outline of it covers about 34 square feet. It was built without permission, but we're requesting now that it be allowed to stay. You can see, I'm not sure how long it's been there, but there are native plants growing in and around it, and it's intended to stay that way. And we hope it'll let them keep that there, rather than putting kayaks on the ground. So the new surface area, including the boat rack, is about 121 square feet in the A zone and 28 square feet in the B zone, which would require 419 square feet of native shrub planting. 550 square feet. I believe that this planting right here is allocated as the mitigation planting. That's 550 square feet, which is about 25% more than what's required. That's shown in detail on the Blue Flax design plan. Vegetation management, I'll let Amy get into that more, but it'll deal with releasing some of the native plants by taking out the invasive plants, a couple of non-native plants to be removed, trees to be removed, and putting some native ones in their place, in place of them, but in a different location. And the 25-foot wide Vista corridor, which will be done according to your Vista pruning standards, is pruning. It's some visibility through there now, but pruning branches, no topping, the shrub layer won't be mowed either, because they'll be looking above that shrub layer. The last thing that we'd like, on the order of conditions from when the pier was constructed, there was a condition put on, this is 6 years ago, which was, I guess, a standard condition at that time, that the permit will be issued for a period of 3 years, at which time the conservation administrator or agent will conduct a site visit to determine if there's adverse impact or alteration to the resource areas on the property, and have a new hearing, and any alteration be corrected. it's my understanding that this condition was challenged, not on this particular case, but on this condition on a different case was challenged, remanded, and my understanding is that this condition is no longer applied to piers, and so, we'd like in the new order conditions that condition 4 and 32 from the prior order pertaining to this pier be removed, or stated that these two older conditions are no longer applicable. Generally, I think that the improvements, that is, the physical structures we're proposing are quite innocuous, certainly compared with the amount of planting and the vegetation improvement that we're proposing. I'll let Amy go into, we'll end with the good stuff that Amy can talk about.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amy Wolfson, and I am representing Blue Flax Design tonight. And I might repeat some of the things that Tom just said, but in with a slightly different lens, I think. So first I want to bring up that the property at 213 Sea Pit Road was recently purchased by Brian and Patricia Keck. And they have really, it is really important to them to become stewards of this land. And if you've been to the site, it is a beautiful property with lots of wonderful native vegetation that is not necessarily common in this area. So prior to the Keck's purchase of the property, previous property owners cut trees on the coastal bank without permission of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. And that is shown on page 3 of the land management plan that you have on the existing conditions map. So 9 trees total were cut. They include 6 pitch pines, 2 of which were saplings, 2 oak trees, which were 8-inch caliper oaks, and a 6-inch spruce tree. Overall, despite this unpermitted cutting, the site is really well vegetated with mostly native plants and an oak pitch pine maritime plant community. There are also previously planted non-native Colorado spruce trees, which also make up the canopy. Some of the black oaks on the site are showing signs of the Sinipic gall wasp. Okay. Due to the dense canopy cover on the site, which you may have noticed if you visited, and I have a pretty good picture over here, right here. The views to the water are really limited from especially the dwelling and the deck. In addition, 2 Colorado spruce trees are blocking the sight line to the dock from the dwelling and the deck, causing a potential safety hazard, not being able to see what's happening on the deck. So there are approximate locations of these spruce trees right here. So the sight line to the dock area over here is really blocked by those non-native Colorado spruce trees. The lawn and grassy area, which Tom spoke about, there's that traditional lawn, which was part of that larger property earlier, transitions into a really naturalized grassy plant community with crinkle hairgrass and Pennsylvania sedge. There's also some Asiatic bittersweet growing in this area and some greenbrier that's starting to colonize in this area. Not too much, but definitely some that we'd like to manage. In this area to the south, all over here, the understory of that area is shown in this picture. So the understory of that area is mostly black huckleberry, which is currently being smothered by aggressive native greenbrier. So it's really taken hold in that area, which is also the spot where a lot of those pitch pines had been previously cut down. So in that disturbed area, that greenbrier has really taken hold. Directly to the south of the dwelling, there's another area where we've noted, right over here, the 8-inch oaks were cut, and we've also noticed some cherry and maple sprouts coming up. And these were previously cut trees that were not cut using best management practices, and those trees will never grow up into mature fruiting trees. And near the path to the dock, there's a bare area that exists where an unpermitted shed once stood, and also right nearby is that wooden kayak rack that Tom was speaking about. There's a path that's leading to this area near the dock, and it's lined with planted shrubs, previously planted shrubs, including sweet fern, winterberry holly, bayberry, and summer sweet. And the summer sweet and winterberry shrubs are not doing so well, potentially because they're maybe not close enough to the water. So now I'll bring you to the goals for this project, which are on page 7 of the land management plan that you have. The goals are to manage the invasive and aggressive plant species within the resource areas and buffer zones. There's also some multiflora rose, a few autumn olive shrubs, and a few Japanese holly shrubs growing in that area to the south of the dwelling and to the west of the dwelling. We would like to restore the native plant species within the 2 existing pathways and enhance the existing open grassy area with herbaceous planting. Protect and support the existing intact, healthy maritime pitch pine oak plant community, improving the stability, function, and wildlife habitat value of the resource areas and buffer zones. Replant the trees that were cut by previous property owners. Improve the access, circulation, and function of the property for the current owners by setting a generator, rinsing station, new decks, stairs, stepping stones, and grilling area, as well as maintaining the existing kayak rack, and to create a vista corridor from the dwelling to the Sea Pit River. So all of these proposed property improvements, they meet the local and state performance standards and are mitigated at a 3-to-1 ratio in Zone A and a 2-to-1 ratio in Zone B. We're proposing to manage the invasive vegetation and the aggressive greenbrier with herbicide, and then they will be removed by hand and disposed of in an off-site facility. And we'd like to manage these species now because they are not a huge problem yet, so this is a really great opportunity to not have to do a ton of work and get the most bang for our buck. So Tom noted that we're proposing an increase in impervious surface of 121 square feet in Zone A, which equals 363 feet at a 3-to-1 ratio, and 28 square feet in Zone B, so that's 56 square feet. 419 square feet of mitigation is required in total. And we're proposing this orange area on the map as mitigation, which is 550 square feet. 40 native shrubs are proposed in this area, including sheep laurel, black huckleberry, lowbush blueberry, and bayberry. To mitigate for those 9 trees that I mentioned, we're proposing to plant 9 trees, and we spoke to Jennifer McKay about this, and as per her request, we made some substitutions in the tree species to make sure we weren't replanting black oak, which is now suffering from the gall wasp. So we're proposing to plant tupelos, pitch pines, and white oak trees to mitigate for those 9 trees. And in the same areas where those trees are being planted, which is in these sort of empty path area over here and this open area over here, we're also planning to restore those areas with native shrubs and ground cover and allowing those areas to naturalize. The 2 Colorado blue spruce trees that are blocking that site view to the dock, we're proposing to remove those and replant 2 white oak trees to mitigate for the tree loss. The shed area will also be restored with 6 native shrubs. And the grassy understory area that's already looking amazing with the crinkle hairgrass and the Pennsylvania sedge will be maintained as is, and we'll also be proposing to add additional crinkle hairgrass and Pennsylvania sedge to this area and treat the greenbrier and Asiatic bittersweet. We're also proposing to plant 15 tublings, pitch pine, tupelo, and white oak tublings or saplings, to plan for the eventual loss of trees due to the disease or eventual age, loss of trees through their age. And that is proposed in the southern area over here. And lastly, we're proposing a 20-foot, 5-foot wide view corridor, which extends southward from the deck to the Sea Pit River. And that is outlined on page 8 of the land management plan. It corresponds to the Falmouth Vista Pruning Guidelines. So the understory layer will be left intact, and shrubs growing higher than 5 feet will be pruned to a height of 5 feet using best management practices. Tree branches will be thinned selectively. The uplifting of tree branches will not exceed 1/3 of the tree's height. No more than 10% of the tree canopy will be taken off any tree. No topping of trees will occur. The aggressive greenbrier climbing through the shrubs and trees will be managed using selective hand-cut and herbicide treatments. Some saplings will be removed. Dead wood will be preserved within the buffer zone whenever possible. The eastern red cedar trees that are existing in that area will be left intact, and the poison ivy will be managed within 4 feet of existing pathways. And in no way do the Kecks wish to clear this entire area for a view. It could be a very exposed site, and they just want some views to the water. So they want to maintain their privacy, but have some views at the same time. Overall, we are proposing to plant 104 native shrubs and 300 plugs of native grasses, 11 trees, and 15 tublings. And I believe that concludes my part of the presentation.
Thank you. Jen?
Nice presentation, Amy, thank you. Only question for Tom. Lucky you, Tom. Do you have a sounding at the end of that dock?
No.
Can you get me a sounding at the end of that dock? Was there a sounding on the original plan for that dock?
Sure, there's one on the original plan, yes.
I'm really hoping they match, because I remember what was on that dock. So I want to know the difference. That's it. If you could get me a sounding at the terminus of that dock, that would be great. And that's my only question.
Thank you. Mario?
Well, I think that Blue Cross has done a typically good job on the planting plan. No problem with the project itself. I just had some questions on the view corridor. It looks as though the previous owner had maintained that as a view corridor.
Previous owner had filed for a view corridor, and I'm not quite sure it got withdrawn, or it wasn't approved, and I think it just
So they never got an order of conditions for the previous corridor. So just a little more detail on the vegetative removal within the corridor. Any tree or sapling under 3 inches will be...
Not any tree, just some of them. So by no means will all saplings be removed.
There are a few trees over 3 inches in diameter.
Those will not be removed at all. So those will be maintained using thinning practices. No topping of the trees will occur.
Right.
So those will be thinned, and that's it.
It looks like not too much in the way of vegetative removal is actually going to be needed here.
No, just some thinning and the greenbrier, which is not necessarily in the way of the view at the moment.
I notice the southern terminus of the corridor seems to kind of creep into the BVW and salt marsh. Do you have any plans for vegetative removal in either one of those resource areas?
certainly not the salt marsh, being just certainly not in the salt marsh, since the salt marsh grass is only so high.
Yeah,
and
with the BVW there too, right?
There's some BVW I'd have to see, and I don't think there are any trees in
I
that
don't
area.
think so either.
It's
Just
a,
this
it's a
little
very
tiny
narrow
area.
BVW area. I mean, we drew the line through there, not intending that it was gonna be mowed.
Not intending that you're gonna actually go in, yeah. No further questions.
Thank you. Mary?
I was at the site and I thought I saw down quite near the water to the left of the Vista corridor, 2 trees tagged for removal.
The trees that potentially have, we didn't tag any.
Are they
trees
the diseased ones? Or?
No, so even the trees that have gall wasp, we're not planning on removing those trees. We are letting those sort of evolve and whatever happens to them. So
they have big pink ties around them.
the trees that had tags were there to see where the vista cora potentially could go, but those are not intended to be removed.
Okay, all right. Another question on, I think it's on your plan, Amy. Yeah, you have a proposal to put in lighting on the path to the left of the Vista corridor as you're going down.
Yes.
And could you tell us a little bit, are you just digging a trench to run line, or what are you doing?
To the path to the left of the vista corridor. Here you're saying?
To the left.
This one?
Yeah, that one.
Yes.
My orientation obviously is toward the left.
You might be better suited to answer that question.
I think I've got to check. I think there's already electricity. I'm not positive.
Okay.
Well, there's electricity to the dock.
There is electricity to the dock, yes.
So it'll just run along the same path as the electricity, low level, short ground lights along there for minimal lighting.
I don't know that it really matters a lot in terms of what you're actually going to do, but the 2 spruces that are going to be replaced, there's inconsistency between your 2 plans and in some cases within the plans as to whether you're going to replace them with black tupelo or white oak. It might be.
Yeah, actually, I'm not sure if it's tupelo or oak, but there were some, because things were changing after she talked with Jen.
Okay.
There was.
So I apologize for that. The plan is to replace them with white oak.
White oak, okay. Is it a problem to reflect that on all the plans?
That's fine.
Okay, thank you. And, I found it confusing as to what was planned for the path in terms of, especially the revegetation, and I thought when I went to the site, it would be clarified for me, and it actually wasn't. I don't know, I have difficulty understanding exactly where you're maintaining and where you're revegetating.
So,
it wasn't staked.
Oh, I apologize for that. There are multiple paths on the site, and they're not all necessary. So this path that is up here.
Yeah, that's a very distinct path.
This is a very distinct path. It will no longer be used as a path. So this will be revegetated with the 40 shrubs.
Excuse me, what about the lower end of it?
This area over here.
No, I mean, way down by the dock, it continues on down.
That distinct path is remaining.
Okay.
Okay.
The lower part.
This path over here
Mhm.
is not being revegetated. This path will remain as is and will allow access to the existing dock. There's another path that sort of forks off from that one.
It seemed to be on the opposite side of the Vista window, is that right?
Yes, there's one on one side of the vista window, and another area, maybe it doesn't look like a path, it's sort of just an open area that doesn't have shrubs or a real understory layer or ground cover layer over here, which is sort of alongside the true path to the dock. So we're planning on revegetating this open area and revegetating this area, and then leaving this path and this path.
Okay.
Did I answer that question?
Yes, you did answer it. And that is how your plan looks, but between the plan and the narratives, I got quite confused as to what was being proposed for this whole thing.
I think maybe it's because there's so many paths.
Maybe so.
Well, really, I think the goal of this is sort of to simplify the path system of this property, maintain the useful ones, and restore the ones that are not necessary in the site.
Okay, good. It's a wonderful place. It's a nice one. That's all, Irene. Thank you.
Okay, Russ.
Tom, can you explain the safety hazard to me? What is the safety hazard?
The visibility to the pier?
Yeah.
It's not a safety hazard.
Is it intruders that you're
No,
concerned
in case somebody falls off the dock.
Yeah,
So they can keep
basically.
an eye on activity on the dock.
Okay, so when the new trees grow up a little bit and they fill out, you're gonna end up with the same issue, aren't you?
Less so than with the spruce, but it's.
You can prune an oak. The spruce is,
Spruce is full,
yeah.
like a Christmas tree.
All right. Mike?
I believe my fellow commissioners,
Thank you.
they know more than I do, and B did a good job describing. I'd like to say congratulations to the applicant. That's a beautiful little piece of woods over there, and they're maintaining it. Thank you.
John?
I like this project also. I was curious about the blue spruce, and I'm just wondering about comparable habitat, I guess, with what's going to be replacing the trees that are taken out.
Well, the blue spruce are non-native trees. So the trees that we're proposing, the white oak, definitely provide a better habitat. This is already a very well canopied site, which you probably noticed. So we're adding to the existing pitch pine oak maritime plant community, which the Colorado spruce doesn't really do. There are also significant number of spruces that will be remaining on the site.
Okay. And, yeah. Oh, with the vista pruning, is it really necessary to use herbicides for the green briar in the vista pruning? Or can you just clip them?
By hand.
Yeah.
So our goal is to allow this area to revegetate and naturalize without having to constantly go in and maintain. So by using herbicide, we hope to be maintaining this area much less and causing much less disturbance. So that's why we believe that using herbicide creates less disturbance. We'll go in there, treat it with herbicide, and cut it by hand. And hopefully that means that we won't have to go back every single year and continue to maintain it.
Okay. But that's just going to be in the vista corridor. That's not applying to the other areas where you're going to be cutting the green briar.
You do the treatment on the green briar.
We are planning on doing the treatment of the green briar the same way throughout the property.
Okay. All right. All right. That wasn't what I read, but thank you for clarifying.
And that's for the same reason, to
Right.
minimize the disturbance.
Okay.
Well, is that it, John?
Yes.
Okay. I'm glad somebody said that. I'm going to make a comment about the spruce. You started off your presentation by saying site view. That's how you described
The sight
code.
line.
Yeah, it's a site view. Almost tempted to crack open that door, but I'm not. I do have something that just sticks in my claw. Deadwood will be preserved within the buffer zone whenever possible. Whenever possible. Who says when it's possible? I mean, that's it doesn't give me, well, it wasn't possible, so we took it. It just leaves something open-ended. I don't want to hang my hat on it, but some of the engineers know how I feel about open-ended, just kind of like the what-ifs type of stuff. I think your narrative and your presentation kind of settles all of that. but when I read things like that, it just triggers a response from me, which I've done. So, one other nice little thing, thank you for putting the barbecue off the deck. You know, that's where I think a lot of times it functions much better off the deck. It's less of a hazard in so many ways. Yeah, that's more of a safety hazard than trying to look through the blue spruce. But, like I said, I let that one go. So, at this point in time, if there's no further discussion on the board, I would entertain a motion.
You're gonna give me that
Close the hearing,
sounding.
take it under advisement.
Second.
That would be Russell's motion, Mike's second. At this point in time, I'll open up, is there anyone in the audience who would like to comment on this project? Seeing none, call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Thank you very much. Next, we're going to go to continued request for hearing under notice of intent. 146 Old Dock Road, West Falmouth, Mass. For permission to raise the existing dwelling and construct a single-family, four-bedroom house with attached garage, porch, and deck with stairs, install Title V sewage disposal system, utilities, dry wells, gravel driveway, stone wall to be cleared and repaired, and the associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping. Good evening, Jeff.
Hi, good evening. I'm Jeff Fry, representing the applicant. In this case, David Wald is preparing to purchase this lot to reconstruct this house. We went over this last time, 2 weeks ago. So there is a slight shift in the house. Septic here is well away from the resource areas. And what it came down to 2 weeks ago was this area primarily beyond the limit of excavation. That was sort of in the view area. So there's a revision here of 12/9/14. We added the wall heights as you've asked for. We've added 2 holly trees in this area and 30 native shrubs. I'm going to go over that a little bit. I also sort of throttled back on the description of the stone wall. We're just taking the fallen stones that have come off the wall. There's about 50 of them, I counted them, and then putting them back onto the wall and the vacancies there. A change in the plan here was pruning back the invasive plants from the trees. We've heard a lot tonight about greenbrier. There's greenbrier that's grown up the cedar trees here, so we want to take that down. It's also smothered the wall. You can't even see it in this area, so we'd like to sort of bring back that old wall in that area. I met Jen on the field. We suggested that maybe this area here could use some new plants. It's all just a clump of invasives. So primarily bittersweet and greenbrier in this area, along with some vine. I'm not even sure what the vine was, but it's just this big tangle. So it's going to be a toughie to straighten that out. There is a little bit of forsythia in there as well. So again, I colored them here in green, but there's a note here to plant 30 shrubs for pruning back the invasives. And we've added 2 American hollies for the English holly we plan to cut. And part of that English holly mitigation is the 3 cedars. So there's 5 trees for the 1 12-inch English holly. So again, septic, house, dry wells, limit of work, and then the mitigation with redoing the stone wall around the perimeter.
And you got the wall heights, right, Jeff? And
Yeah,
the
wall
letter from
heights, I
Peter.
have
Yep.
10 locations shown, WH with the height. There's 10 of those. They average out to be about 39 inches of height in the wall. It's pretty tall, it's, right up there.
And you got your letter from Peter.
Oh, yes, last thing there. Right. I couldn't get a letter with a
It's an
letterhead
email.
on it, but a response from an email. And, he's allowing us to work in this shoulder here. Here,
Tom.
the wall's all uncovered except for a little bit of dumping that we plan to take away. And that'll do it. Any questions?
All in all, Mr. Chairman, Jeff addressed all of the staff's concerns and I believe all of the board's concerns.
Thank you, Jen.
No problem.
Is there any discussion on the board?
No questions.
Okay.
Thanks, Jeff, for clarifying the wall there.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
That made all the difference.
Yep.
I think you were heard. That was awesome. If there's no need for any further information, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to close the hearing, take it under advisement.
Second.
Russell's motion, Mary second. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to comment on this project? Seeing none, call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Jen, are we going to be voting anything this evening?
Night, Jeff. Happy holidays if we don't
Yes.
see you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, you too.
Mr. Chairman, we have to schedule a meeting to vote the ones we close tonight, so we can do those as well. How does everybody's schedule look for December 29th at, you guys pick the time.
December 29th.
What is
Yeah,
that?
it's a Tuesday.
Tuesday.
It's a random Tuesday.
I think it's, okay.
No, it's a Tuesday. I
And that's-
think. Hang on, wait a minute.
It's a Monday.
Monday, I'm sorry, it's a random Monday. No, then we're doing it on the 30th. I don't want to do it that Monday. How about the 30th? Would the 30th work?
If it's early rather than late.
Yeah, yeah, I know.
And
Russ?
what are we calling early?
Well,
No problem.
Not 3 p.m.
no, you know what? In the time, you gotta talk to these guys about the time.
Yep,
It's gonna
so-
be Russ and Tom dictating the time, so.
I think it worked pretty well last
Did
time.
7:30 work for you?
7:30
Sure.
was fine.
If that's
doable.
amenable to others, that'll be fine with me.
Is that the one you forgot about?
No, that was a different one.
Oh,
No, that
okay.
was the one before that started at 7.
Before that was
But
at
I
7.
I did,
Same time, same place.
Barely.
Still stuck.
By 7:30 though, so
I did.
7:30 must be the...
I was.
All right, 7:30, December 30th, Tuesday. I will have Melanie post a public meeting to vote all of the orders.
And
Okay?
that would include the two that are on the
That's
agenda?
including the two tonight.
agenda tonight.
Yep.
I would like to take this opportunity selfishly to wish the entire board and staff and everyone that's involved with this a wonderful holiday and New Year. May it greet you with health and happiness. I'm grateful for all that I've received this year. I stepped into the chair and did not know that I would receive such support, and I am grateful for that. And I wish all of you a very happy holiday and New Year.
Thank you.
As,
You as well.
Thank you. And as co-chair, I wish the same and remind you to stay well.
Yes.
Just a little new business maybe?
Yes.
Before we move on to the first of the year, the new year. I noticed some of the other boards do the pledge before the meetings, and I thought that might not be such a bad thing for us to do. I don't know if you want to throw it out there, but I figured I'd put it on the floor.
I have no objection to that myself, because I've been to several different board meetings in other towns as well, and if that's something that the board would like to entertain, so be it. I don't know if that needs to be a motion, or if it's just something that we can... How does the board feel? Does anybody have an objection to starting the hearings with the pledge in the new
I
year?
don't think I object. I kind of like the way we've been doing it.
Okay, that's
I mean,
that's why we're putting it out there.
I feel about the same way as John. I don't object.
Okay?
I don't object. I'm
We can revisit this after the new year, if it's just
Why don't-
Good idea,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
so
I'll think about it.
outstanding. Well, outside of that, I'll entertain the other kind of motion.
Move to adjourn.
I need a second.
Second.
Gary's and John's. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous? So